All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Happy Tuesday. This is the Executive Board of Directors meeting for Estero Public Schools. Now, to get some advice on our form, we'll record the attendance and guests by our Executive Director, Mr. Kett.
Chairman Bullock,
Present.
Vice Chair Newbern is here. Ms. Bootham,
Present.
Ms. Alvarado,
Present.
and noting that Secretary Lee is not attending today's meeting. Guests, Mr. Wren. Present. Mr. Griffin. Is Mr. Griffin logged in yet? Mr. Morgan?
I don't see him yet, but give me a second here.
Ms. Hammond? Present. Ms. Hang? Present. And Mr. Morgan is here.
Present.
Griffin is here.
Oh yeah, Ryan's here. He's coming in now.
Yes, thank you so much. Quorum is met.
All right, with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item, the next item on the agenda is to approve the board minutes from the March 18th and the March 26th board meetings. And hopefully all of our board members have an opportunity to review those minutes, and I will entertain a motion or action on those minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the April meeting, no, the March meeting.
I second that.
Moving second, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. Next item is public comments. Mr. Morgan, do we have any guests who have signed up to make public comments?
No public comment sign up at this time.
Thank you. Moving on, we'll move to the financial section of our board meeting. And the first item is to receive and approve the March 2025 financials for EPS and EPS2. That will ask Mr. Griffin from XA. Mr. Griffin.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, in front of you today, we have our financial dashboard as of month-end close March 2025. In this presentation, we have enrollment information for both schools through month 7. I believe we just wrapped up month 8 and P2, but I wanted to flag that this is going through month 7 only. As of month 7, we had 353 students enrolled in both schools, and our average daily attendance percentage was averaged at 93.4%. This is slightly lower than what we projected in the last board packet, but the last board packet had attendance information for months 1 through 5 only. After adding in month 6 and month 7, it looked as though those months were impacted a little bit about attendance. And I think some of the reason there could have been the fires and the chaos that was going on at that time. Going on to the income statement, there has not been a lot of changes on a month-to-month basis. The changes worth noting, our LCFF, due to our lower ADA, is forecasted to be about 70,000 lower than budget. And that's a change from the last presentation of about $16,000. So based on ADA, we're projecting 70,000 less in our LCFF formula. Federal revenue is coming in about $60,000 higher. The main reason for that is a carryover of ESSER 3 funding that we didn't have planned for the 24-25 school year. So that was additional revenue not budgeted for. On the expense side, the big variance that we've had is the operating expenses for us realizing all of the gauge costs for the year. And those gauged expenses came in about $2.6 million. and they are what's driving the net loss of $2.3 million for the school year. Had it not been for the Gage write-off, our operating net income is $275,000 in the positive for this school year. On the cash side, we ended the month of March with 8.3 million, and we're projecting 5.6 million at year end. That cash balance is something to watch from now to the end of the year. I like to always lean on the conservative side for cash. My projections include more timely, vendor payables than is actually going to happen. Our vendors don't bill us in the month that we incur expenses. So there's opportunity for that cash balance to go up between now and then. But I did want to flag that this is something that we should keep an eye on because I anticipate this to change, but I anticipate it to change in the positive as we get closer to year end. In this packet, I also have the individual dashboards for each school. As you can see for EPS 1, I'll just touch on enrollment. Enrollment through month 7, we had 231 students, and we budgeted for 232. Our forecast was 226 because at one point in time we lost a few kids, but I think between that time and now, we've added them back on. So for our forecast, we're holding our revenue for 226 students, but I believe we still have more than that today. EPS 2 has 122 students as of month 7, and that's 2 better than the 120 that we originally budgeted. So we are also experiencing higher enrollment at that campus relative to budget. Within the packet, I also have a dashboard for the home office. The home office is set up just as to break even, but I did want to point out that this dashboard is also included in the packet, as well as our notes to the financials, our income statement, full income statement, full balance sheet, and our check register showing all of the disbursements for the month of March. And I always include the full check register because Xterra's board is are good stewards of public funds, and for transparency reasons, all board members should have eyes on the disbursements that the school makes with public funds. If anyone has any questions around any of the expenses, you can always ask me during the meeting, before the meeting, or after the meeting if a question arises after the presentation ends. That concludes March. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any questions from the board on March financials? If not, I'll entertain a motion to receive the report.
To receive the April by April.
Second.
Correction, the March financials.
March, sorry. April meeting, March financials.
Ms. Boone.
Second. Yes.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Now we'll move to update on our budget next year.
And while we're transitioning, can I also say that I was very saddened not to be able to attend in person today? I just have a heavy load of meetings on top of meetings for budgets and other things, and I appreciate the ability to Zoom, and I just want you to know I was really disappointed that I wasn't able to be there in person.
Boy, miss seeing you in person. Hopefully we'll see you at our meeting. That will be
Absolutely.
very interesting meeting we're talking about. Hopefully we'll have the May revision, revise, and we'll talk more about the budget.
We will. You're on track. Chairman Bullock, members of the board, thank you so much for allowing me to present today on our continuing draft budget development. I do have several timely updates from the last 7 or 10 days of federal activity as well as state activity that I'll be reporting to you today. And I will apologize to and thank in advance Ms. Martinez, who is doing the simultaneous translation for us today. In gratitude, Ms. Martinez, in advance. So as we remind ourselves of the state's budgeting calendar overlaid with our own budgeting calendar, what I really want to highlight for you here is that we really are finished drafting what I'm going to refer to as version A of our draft budget, and we're just in the formatting phases to bring that back to you all at the May meeting. However, the governor's revised budget proposal to the legislature is due May 14th. I do not expect it early, and it will be, by all accounts, a tighter, more impactful budget than the January proposal, due in part to several factors that we're going to talk about today. So we'll be expecting that May 14th. Our meeting is May 20th. So we will do our best to react to that within that time frame, but certainly for the June meeting, the legislature will not approve their state budget until June 30. And I am cautioning this board that while we can and should and do revise our own budget in September because of actualized enrollment versus anticipated enrollment, the state is going to have to pass budget trailers in August and September to amend this budget. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is today. As of yesterday, we had confirmed enrollment of 307 total students for next year. Because this is accounting for our exit of 5th and 8th grade and our intake of new TK kinders. So whereas we are looking to have 20 to 22 students in TK kinder at both of our elementary locations, you can see that in the green. Actual applications already turned in, is 5 to 7 students. This is normal for Xterra. Our families really like to do their enrollment paperwork around August 1st, which, as you can imagine, drives my team a little bit bonkers, right? But nonetheless, and then we have a good list of families who have picked up their packets and they're just working on them. If we look at EPS2, for example, and we added those families, we would only be like 5 or 6 more students away from our goal for TK Kinder at our Eastman location, which is great news. And I just want to again advise everybody that we have been advised by LAUSD that we must have 123 or more students enrolled at Xterra Eastman EPS2 when we turn in our renewal paperwork in August. So we will be working very hard, to ensure that would be one more student than we had this year. And we were advised going into renewal that enrollment must be going back in a positive and not a negative direction. So by definition, we were told one more student is one more student than you have today, right? So that's our minimum. However, the principal would prefer to have 131 students as her goal, but we must have at least 123. And This document is updated 2 to 3 times a week by the team. I'm also happy to celebrate, and Team 3, of course, can talk about this in a little while, but our new Associate Director of Recruitment and Family Engagement is Miss Noemi Morales. She did her onboarding this morning. We can talk a little bit more about that when we get to Team 3, but she and I are meeting about this spreadsheet tomorrow, as you can imagine, and dialing it. If we look at our next slide,
I'm sorry, I have a question really fast.
please go
Do
ahead.
we, like, ask families if, like, is there any information besides the packets that indicate whether families are planning to come back?
We've already done all of that. That's finished.
Okay.
So this accounts for all of our returning students
Okay.
plus new families.
Okay, but the pink side is only people who have like finished their packets.
And or are currently enrolled and pledged to return.
Got it.
Yes, so that's a combined number, and green is our goal.
Okay.
Right, that
Thank
we're
you.
pushing towards. So when we look at ADA, and we talk about this every month when we look at our financials, but of course, California is one of the few states that has a penalty for absences built into the funding formula. And this also just politically disadvantages school districts that serve low-income students. Low-income students are more likely to be chronically absent, more likely to be impacted by societal, medical, or family factors that prevent them from attending school. So from a social justice perspective, certainly the state of California can and should remove the ADA penalty. But so when we build the budget model, we take the number of enrolled students that you would see on the previous slide, and then we multiply that by a percentage of what we anticipate our ADA will be. And then that is the amount of LCFF funds that we calculate as our revenue to come in. I will also highlight for you that the state only uses the close of P2 from the previous year as your final number for how much you will receive of your LCFF in the following year. So since P2 closed on Friday, there could be some minor adjustments, but essentially our finalized ADA for 24-25 for budgeting purposes is 93.4%, impacting the budget model for 24-25. So it's not to say we don't care about absences in P3. We do, because that's testing season and we want every student to be at school every day. But from a budgeting perspective, any absence after P2 or any improvement in attendance after P2 does not help us or hurt us. But what I'm highlighting for you here is we start the year strong and then we fade, right? So we budgeted for 94.3. We were on the nose at the end of P1 at 94.31, but we slipped to 93.4. It is true that we had immigration fears and the impact of the fires in this P2. However, you'll see that's a pattern. It's a pattern. And one of the reasons it's a pattern for us is that families travel south over holiday and don't come back on time or leave early. And so that's a parent education piece, right? That has improved. But we continue to see this P2 decline. So that'll be something we'll be targeting for next year. We had built the budget model on a 94% ADA. So we'll have to do a slight revision to look at 93.4. There's also still some discussion of hold harmless for LA County around the fires that would take legislative action. So we'll see what happens there. In terms of our staffing levels, you can see here reflected this year, today, right now, we have 25 teachers and 1 coach, 26 teachers, coaches, RSTs. Next year, we will have 24. And it is a healthy attrition decision for us. We have a teacher that resigned mid-year. We had a science vacancy that was just plaguing us. We had an RST that wanted to transition into gen ed for next year. And we were able to eliminate an RST position with that teacher's transfer. So these are very healthy, happy reduction in staffing level to report out. We will also have a small savings in our counseling line. We had 1 psychologist and 2.5 counselors this year. Next year, we will have 1 psychologist, 2 counselors, but we're also getting 2 college counselor interns from a new partnership with LMU, who are free to us, but we actually get more counseling hours for our students, and we save a half of a salary. So that's a win. We did lay off 2 site subs. And we're looking for other opportunities for those 2 subs to perhaps have, other opportunities within our organization, but this is a celebration for us that the impact of staff absences that we were really experiencing after COVID has drastically improved. And so we no longer need to carry such a high level of internal subs. We also have a little bit of natural attrition occurring at the instructional aid level. We had floated an extra aide for our large 4th grade at Breed that will be reconciled for next year, able to move some people around. We have 1 less special education related IEP driven aid needed for next year. So we're able to use some reassignment and attrition there. And at the home office, we did have the reorganization that you all approved earlier this spring. And that created an opportunity for an internal promotion opportunity for Ms. Martinez that we spoke about at the home office. And then at the school sites, we also had an internal promotion and the ability to eliminate 1 extra position, but still provide those essential services at our campuses, with Ms. Martinez transferring to the home office. So slightly less staff than this year, all in very healthy margins, and with minimal layoffs. So overall, we have reduced the budget from this year to next year by around $500,000. This includes every employee moving on step and column, which is an average of a minimum change of 2.5%. I guess I should say apologies, not average. And we are still awaiting our final numbers impacting Schedule D for the Prop 39 rent increase of 21%. LAUSD made 2 moves when they gave this year's Prop 39 offers, which actually inflated the offer year over year by 38%. It's a 21% cost per square foot increase. And then for us, it was about a 17% increase because there are off-schedule spaces at the schools that the school is always able to have their pro rata share access to, but it's a document that is buried. You almost have to have the map of the school and know what you're asking for. The charter is entitled to their pro rata share of all those spaces. So if we have 40% and you have a flex space computer lab, as an example, we would have the choice to have that computer lab for 40% if we wanted it. So it's ours to accept or decline. Now that's an example we don't use because we have 1-to-1 devices for all of our students anyways, but it's a good concrete example for you. In past years, that was always back of napkin math that you had to do and then negotiate with the UTLA site rep and the co-principal, and there was some tension there from mostly the UTLA rep not wanting to give up that space to the charter renter. But then you have to pay for whatever of that space you take. And so in our case, we decline that space because of affordability. So when we take all of what LAUSD did this year is they said, plus there's all this other square footage on this somewhat secretive list. And we're just gonna automatically add that cost to your lease offer. And now a charter has to decline it instead of ask for it. Now, we are not falling for this trick. But it is my general concern that many charters may fall victim to this sneaky accounting practice on the part of LAUSD Prop 39. I also want to highlight that we actually cut more than $500,000, but we incurred many more ELOP expenses that we hadn't done in our original 24-25 budget proposal. So in the 25-26 draft, we've captured all of those things like air reading on the front end. So while it's good that the bottom line is $500,000 less, we did better than that on the cuts, is what I want to highlight for you all. And I'm proud of my team, and I thank them for all of their hard work on that. If we look at the next slide, I have some color coding here for you. And there's some assumptions here. So we are anticipating having about $10.5 million in revenue and carryover of one-time funds. This does not include the plus or minus $5 million in savings that we have. Okay, so the savings isn't even sitting on this balance sheet for you. What I'm highlighting for you here is a couple of things. We put a couple less than this year's student enrollment, and then we use the 94% ADA, because it's always better to budget a little lower and have extra than to budget too tight and not hit your mark, you know, and have to cut. So you'll notice we are going to have at least 123 students at EPS2, for example, but here we said 120 because we're trying to give ourselves a little cushion. This LCFF base and supplemental in concentration assumes that the governor's proposed 2.43% COLA holds. If I was betting today, I will tell you right now, that will not be the number on May 14th. It will be much smaller than that. Okay, it will be much smaller than that. 2 years ago, our COLA was 8%. Last year, our COLA was less than 1%. Very wildly different, right? So the governor is not going to be able to maintain this 2.43% COLA offering. So I'm highlighting that for you. And it's good then that we've shaved a couple students off of our count here. The other thing that I'm highlighting for you is the Title I money and the federal special education money, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. But that's what you're seeing in the salmon color. Our pass-through grant funds for food service and after school 21st century grant programming is the light green font there. The rest of these funds on the left-hand side are continuing, ongoing standard funds, with the exception of the SELVA money, but that's a pretty easy get. It's also highlighting in bright green for you the SMA dollars. SMA is the Medi-Cal reimbursement services, which again, I'm going to be talking about in a minute. There's a new fund being proposed called discretionary block grant. We don't have a dollar amount yet. I'll be speaking to that in a moment. Federal and state special ed dollars, transitional kindergarten dollars, which the governor is publicly declaring he's not giving up, that's a line in the sand for him. We have already received the rest of these funds, the literacy coach funds, the arts, music, instructional material block grant, the educator effectiveness block grant. Those yellow funds are in the bank. And the ELOP funds in green are rollover funds for us and our grant award for next year that we've already received. So when we add all of that together, we are at 10.5 million in revenue. But there are some additional factors.
Clarifying
Sure.
question. When you say the funds in yellow are already in the bank, have we recognized those funds or are they unearned revenue? As of now?
Ryan, can you answer that? Are they recognized or future revenue tagged? I think they're right.
So, yeah, so depending on, so the amounts that you see in front of you, except for the literacy coach funds, that's not the total award. Those are just the amounts that are being carried over. We only realize the amounts that we assign expenditures to. So these that you're seeing here have not yet been realized, which is why they're being carried over. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly, thank you.
Yeah.
However, there are some troubling data points that are going to impact the May revise and are going to impact school district funding over the next several years. So the first thing that I want us to look at together is this graph, which the blue-gray bars are total enrollment in public schools across the entire state of California. And you can see it declined after COVID, and it is still slightly declining, but mostly now leveled off. Those final last couple of bars there on the far right-hand side. However, the red dotted line is the birth rate in California. So if we go back 4 years or 5 years on the red dots, that's how many children were born 4 years ago that could be enrolling in TK for August. And this trend line is very clear. There are literally less babies today than there were in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, and it's going down every year. There is no conventional wisdom that this will turn around. People are having fewer babies and people have left California. When you put those two things together, these red dots are going to continue to go down. On the next slide, equally troubling data for budget implication is what we're seeing here. On the left, what we are looking at is the number of families that are qualifying as low income, foster youth, or English learner is the bottom dot, which is increasing, versus the total enrollment, which is declining. What this means is, as total enrollment is going down, the number of most support needed students is going up. And that whole percentage of students who need additional supports and services and deserve and are entitled to and should receive is rapidly growing the non-low income, non-UPP headcount. Now in our school district, over 98, 99% of our students are UPP students, meaning they're either low income, foster youth, English learner, or a combination of the three. Additionally, this bottom chart on the left is showing us the absolutely staggering spike in the number of students qualifying for special education services for the 2 years coming out of COVID. Students had a hard time, did not qualify through COVID during the closure. It was very cumbersome and difficult to do. But the post-COVID rate is much higher than the pre-COVID rate. This is in part due to perhaps over-identification, just because of the learning gap that had not been actually tied to a disability. But nonetheless, the IEP comes with services. Those services come with dollar amounts. And this is a further impact on school district budgets. So what you're looking at on the right then is the amount of revenue, expenses, sorry, not revenue, expenditure per student average. And so, how much funding incursion or impact, is happening because of the statistics that we're looking at on the left. And what you're seeing here is those costs are just on the rise. Now, this gives me the opportunity to remind you that last month we celebrated that Ms. Hannon and her team has actually, for the first time in many, many years, reduced our total sped budget for next year. And this is a massive celebration as you're looking at the data that's in front of us here. So what other impacts, because this data is pretty true nationwide, what other impacts are really harming California? First, because of the LA County fires, tax collection on state filing of taxes is delayed. So whereas the May revise should have the April 15th math baked in, we do not this year. So this is in part why I am telling you the state legislature will do a budget revision in August and September, because people now do not have to pay their taxes until August, September for state.
As was the case maybe 5-6 years ago.
Correct. We also have the impact on Q3 business financial filings from all of the businesses being closed, impacted and harmed by the fires. So not just personal income tax,
Right.
but also business revenue. The second factor is the tariff war that we are currently suffering under. California, as a state, is the 5th largest economy on the planet, behind the entire US economy as a whole, China, Germany, and Japan, and then California, and then the rest of the planet comes after California. This is how large the California economy is. So Governor Newsom is actively lobbying directly to foreign nations, asking that retaliatory tariffs being made by Japan or Britain or Germany not be placed on California goods. We don't know if he will prevail, but also our port system that is job creation, that is revenue making, is going to slow down because less people are importing. And as less people import, that's a loss of jobs, that's a loss of hours, wages, that's going to drastically disproportionately impact California over the rest of the country. So this is a major factor. The next major factor is the looming likelihood that increases every single day that the nation will default into a recession, that we will experience what's called stagflation, new inflation. The United States stock market had the worst April since the Great Depression. This is the worst start to the financial market for any president since 1928. Again, because of the size and scale of the California economy, we will feel more of that pain than other states. If we continue this very exciting conversation, the budget continuing resolution that Congress just passed, that was not a continuing resolution, outlines an expectation for significant cuts being made to Medi-Cal. Remember, we receive Medi-Cal reimbursement money, about $60,000 a year. That will directly impact our budget if we lose that revenue, but this will also directly impact our families, as the large majority of our students are on Medi-Cal services. I also mention this because the state legislature just 2 weeks ago passed an emergency budget authorization to shore up and backfill California's Medi-Cal supplemental line that bolsters what we get from the federal government. And that was over $1 billion. So if we project that need into the 25-26 budget model, right, that's very, very real impact on how much money they can spend on everything else. We also are seeing, as I mentioned, declining enrollment statewide. The number one conversation school boards are having across California right now is school closure. Xterra made very difficult decisions over the last 2 years. We are actually farther along than other districts on reconciling our staffing to enrollment. However, as this board is aware, and just reminding you, we will have to consolidate our campuses under one roof to ultimately be able to balance our budget once the one-time funds are gone. There is a very new, very real direct threat to California for federal funds. The federal government notified the state of Maine 2 weeks ago that they are cutting off all federal funds to the state of Maine because the state of Maine has a law that does allow transgender student athletes to participate in their sport of choice. The Maine governor got into a public tiff with the president, and so the president within days notified Maine that they're cutting off their federal funds. Now Maine is suing. The one should not beget the other, right? Those are endowed to Maine by Congress, not the president, etc. But California has the exact same law that Maine has. So if this is an issue that continues to get under President Trump's skin, he could turn next to California. We have about $500,000 in our budget for federal funds. The Department of Education also sent a demand letter to our state superintendent and superintendents statewide, demanding a pledge that we be DEI compliant, and that if we don't sign the letter, we will lose our funds. California's united response is we follow all federal laws. Thank you very much. And we always do, we always will. We, move along, there's nothing to see here. But again, how inflamed does the president want to get around these issues? So there is a strong advisory that every school district in California should create a second model that does not include federal dollars. So that is something that Mr. Griffin and I will be working on over the next couple of months to have in our back pocket. But I'm telling you right now, that's $500,000. We do not have $500,000 left over in our current budget model. Other factors, and thank goodness that this is not impacting Xterra, but it is heavily impacting the majority of school districts in California, is the unsustainable salary increases from union negotiations and a change in strategy for union negotiations. For decades, the expectation was COLA was fair, and that is no longer California Teacher Association's position. We have watched LAUSD's union negotiations closely. They're really harming LAUSD, and LAUSD is plowing towards default.
Yeah.
We are expecting cuts in the congressional budget process to special education speech therapy dollars and mental health dollars coming through Medi-Cal. And then lastly, perhaps ending on a high note, the budget draft included a $1.6 billion new one-time fund discretionary block grant to be applied across the entire state for the purpose of stabilization. But I caution this board, we've lived on these balloons through COVID, and we cannot continue to live on balloon. You know this, but it's where we're at. So what does all of this mean for us? We will have to continue to make changes to balance our budget as the $2.6 million in one-time funds that we are relying on sunsets, or as the $500,000 in federal revenue disappears. So what are our choices? Increase enrollment, of course, is a choice. We understand the challenges there. Phase out the $2.6 million in staffing and programming over the next 2 years. Consolidate so that we don't have duplicative positions and costs, or any combination of these three things, right, would be ideal to be fiscally solvent. It's just the reality that we're in. So we are bringing you draft version A for sure. By May 20th, we'll have draft version A and B for you for your draft A approval, you know, at our June 17th meeting. But we will have to come back to the table in September or even October to do our own budget revise. So thank you for this exhaustive kind of summary here of bad news. But we are in a better position today than we were 12 or 24 months ago, but we are not in the position that we need to be in. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Kent.
Thank you.
It's always best to hope for the future, but always hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And I would also add that not only do we need to have a plan A, plan B, probably a plan C, plan D, some scenario planning.
Yes.
As I'm doing my own organization, same issues, federal funds and budget cuts from federal, state, city and counties. It's a good thing we don't have any funding from city and county.
Yes.
Yeah, we're in process of doing some scenario planning to carry us through the end of this fiscal year, and then into the next fiscal year. So I would advise that we do the same,
Understood.
to prepare for the worst.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Has a quick question.
Please.
The data from the CDE on slide 12 and 13, is there any way to get more local data similar to that?
You know, this came from Ed West, think tank, who presented this kind of, you know, statewide look at CASBO. I imagine, obviously, they aggregated this data to produce it.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question of dialing in, and I'm not sure if it comes, it's coming to the CDE, but it's probably coming from Health and Human Services, you know, data. That's a great question that we'll have to see if we can get access to those files
Okay.
by county
Okay.
and or by zip code.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. And also just, I mean, like, we're in a, like we as like a state, you know, not as like a region or like a bad place. But you know, I don't want you guys have done a great job with this work, and I'm confident that we'll get where we need to be. And it's kind of clouded in the current budget with the Gauge project that you don't get to see like the real impact of the work
That's right.
that you all did.
That's right.
So I just want to appreciate that.
Yeah, that's an important call out. This team and our principals have worked exceptionally hard in right sizing their department budgets.
Yeah.
And I'll be somewhat of a counter that it's just beginning.
No, I know that. I know.
Sure,
I know.
Um,
I
but
know.
I
I
appreciate-
think that's why I'm saying that is because I think it's like you did such hard work and it's kind of covered up, and then on top of it, I think we are heading into a period where it's gonna get worse.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. But I appreciate the work that has been done, and I know there's a lot more to come.
Thank you.
Agreed. Right ahead of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll move to our governance. First have our panorama data presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to bring
our spring panorama data to you guys today. If you remember, last year I presented our fall panorama data to you. So every spring and fall, we survey all of the staff, students, families. They're all surveyed in the spring to get feedback on SEL programming, school climate, school safety, and PBIS. So these surveys really help us understand how our SEL program is going and how the interventions we have in place are working, and give us the perspectives, like how the students feel like the programs are working, how the staff feel like the programs are working, and what families think and see when they're at the school setting. So the surveys are also a way for us to have that communication, because when we get the feedback, we know like this is working well, or we should change this. We need to put more interventions for these particular areas. Next, please. So this year, we have really put a lot of focus on doing things to build a positive school climate. School-wide, we are really happy to have strong leadership across all of our school sites. You know, we've had a lot of things for staff, like Underground Spirit Days, staff celebrations, staff and student sports tournaments, which I know me and Ms. Salas talked to you guys about, I think, last month. We really worked on kind of building out more systems in PBIS. We totally differentiated our incentive systems because we knew what was working well in elementary wasn't necessarily working well in middle school. We offered much more like school-wide incentives, like fill days. We did a lot of data analysis with referral data, incentive data. We've had attendance incentives, spirit weeks. So a lot of things to really build out that system. We brought back Parent University this year, and we've worked hard to have more opportunities for parents to engage with the school. So that's just a little bit of framing before I go over the data. So I want to celebrate some of the growth trends that we saw before I go kind of detailed into the data. So we saw an increase in school value, student effort, and self-efficacy in math and ELA. And this was directly reported to us from the students. We also saw a really positive increase in our answers from our middle school students, which have really been just a place where we always had really low scores when it came to school belonging, school climate, and even safety. Teachers and staff reported positive increases in relationships with school leaders, and then families reported an increase in family engagement and very positive feedback around school climate. And because we've been, doing these surveys for a few years, we are able to go back and compare the data we got this spring from last spring and even the spring before. So when we looked at our elementary students, and we just surveyed 3rd through 5th grade for elementary, the little ones in kinder and TK, 1st and 2nd are kind of too little to do the surveys yet. So this data is from our 3rd and 5th grade students. So what we saw from these students is that they reported that they valued school at a higher rate, like they saw school as more important personally than they did last spring. And then they also reported that they were putting in higher amounts of class effort, like they were trying harder in their classes than what they reported last spring. Next slide, please. For our middle school students, and I wanted to highlight that the middle school feedback has a lot of positive changes compared to last school year. They shared that they feel safer at school. And that's, that is a really big issue for middle school where, it's just a trend. It's not just our middle school, it's all middle schools where we have like behavior concerns and more safety issues than at elementary. They also reported that they see more value in school and they feel like they belong more at school. And also, very notably, we saw a big increase in their feelings of self-efficacy around ELA,
which does let us know that our interventions such as air reading, having foundational reading skills instruction at the middle school too, these have really helped the students. And that was a big need that we saw from last year.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
So the data in these boxes on both of these slides, they're both from this school year.
Yes, the data is both from the school year, yeah. I will go into more data because these are sort of all the students together and some of it you can see 23 compared to 24.
Okay.
Yeah, but what this kind of shows you is like, these are the percentages and then we're able to look and see what the percentages were from last year.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, good question. So we also had feedback from the families, and families reported they had more opportunities to engage with the school. But the biggest increases, if you look at those percentages, were actually how they feel about school fit, school climate, and the school setting rigorous expectations and school safety. So all of these percentages improved from last spring because we have these same surveys where we survey the families. For staff and teacher feedback, you can see here that staff and teachers reported overwhelmingly that leadership relationships and school climate had improved this school year. And I think a large part of that, and you'll see when I go into the school by school data, has to do with the fact that every site has like its dedicated admin that's at that school site. So this does give us clear feedback that the staff trust the leaders and that our leaders have strong relationships with the staff and the teachers on campus.
I'm curious, what were the questions asked to deliver this data that you're sharing?
Yeah, so the surveys are very, very long. I will tell you, some of these surveys are almost 100 questions, but there are questions like, some of them it's like on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is absolutely does not agree, 5 is strongly agree. How do you feel your leader responds to you with concerns? Do you feel like your leader actually cares about you personally? These are the sort of questions, like perception questions, that the survey is composed of. And then there's questions like, does your leader offer you feedback and coaching when there's a problem? Do they model things like that? These are the sort of questions.
We have a PDF of the questions that we could provide to the board.
Yeah, we do.
Great.
And this 30% means,
So
30% increase based on the sample size 92, based on what's the total population?
So right there, what you're looking at is all of our schools together. So then in the green, it's showing you where we had the highest answers or the highest percentages. And the orange ones, it's showing you where we had lowest percentages, because this is comparing the data from all of our 3 school sites together.
So we don't separate the data individually by every school?
We do, and I'm about to go over that.
Okay.
This is just all the data together. But yeah, I will show you the data for each school site.
So, sorry, to help me expand on Chairman Bullock's question, if we look at how does staff feel we provide additional family assistance? And there's a 63 and a 33 sitting there. 66% feel we do that well, 33% think we could do better.
No, it just means that what this answer with the lowest amount of people that answered positively is like an orange answer for these. Yeah.
Each row is a different school.
Oh,
So
yes.
where you see the staff survey, it was only 2 schools. But teacher survey, it looks like there's 1
Yes.
row per school.
I
And
see.
the percentage is the percent that responded favorably.
Okay, so if we keep going, some of this will make more sense.
Yeah, thank you guys will see that, yeah. And one thing to point out too is because Extero schools are pretty small, some you will see there's only 2 lines for the staff feedback. So the program won't release data if the responses are too few, just because the data has to be anonymous. So that is why there's only 2 lines on the other one, just because of how small our schools are when we split them up.
All right.
Okay. All right. So now, Diane, to answer your question, I'm gonna go into the survey data by school site, because yes, we are able to see it school by school. So just looking at, these are our 3rd through 5th grade students at our Xterra Breed campus. Just kind of looking at ranking and areas of growth for these students. One of the areas that stood out for Breed students was self-efficacy about math. 51% of these students responded favorably. And one thing that this platform does is allow us to compare our schools nationally. So while 51%, we see it's still barely like just over half of our students, that actually puts us at the 70th percentile nationally, because nationally, 3rd through 5th grade students are not feeling this way about math overall. But when we're sort of looking at these trends, we also want to think about our areas of growth, because overall, for 3rd through 5th grade students at Breed, our other survey areas were ranked lower compared to schools across the nation. So the other areas, which were classroom effort, valuing of school, and self-efficacy about ELA, were definitely lower at Breed. So these are areas for us to continue to work on. When it came to what families said about Breed, again, this platform lets us compare our schools with each other. And as you can see right there, where school climate is highlighted in blue, it's showing that school climate, 82% of families that completed the survey for Breed answered positively about school climate at Breed. And then families also ranked family support very high at Breed compared to our other schools. So this graph is comparing Breed to Xterra Eastman and Xterra 2nd Street. So there's definitely celebrations around school climate and school fit, but you guys could see this on the other slide. Family engagement is at 32%. So families still are saying like they need more opportunities to engage.
Or different.
Yeah.
Different opportunities.
The data from our staff at Breed showed that staff ranked staff and family relationships near the 80th percentile. And this is comparing Breed to all schools. So what staff reported is like staff has stronger relationships with families than most school staff report. So that's a really positive celebration for Breed. But again, we get glows and we get grows from these surveys. On the other hand, staff are reporting that they feel like they need more tools and more resources to help families out. So that's where you see that 33%, because staff want more tools and more resources for families. Okay. What teachers say about Breed, and again, this is split up because Breed had a big enough sample size to have staff surveys and teacher surveys. The biggest sort of highlight from this is the staff leadership relationships, and that is our newest leader, who is at Breed, Ms. Ortiz. So the staff reports around the staff leader relationships at Xterra were the highest from all of our school sites, which is a big celebration. But again, always areas for improvement. So feedback and coaching and professional learning were an area that staff reported like they would, you know, it's a continued area of improvement. Okay, and I will pause for questions before I go to the next school, if you guys have any questions about the Breed data, because that's just Xterra Breed data.
I just want to commend Ms. Ortiz, who is our newest leader, former teacher that came back to us. If you recall, this board supported the decision to have a designated leader at Read Every Day this year. We have seen improved student attendance, decreased referrals, improved family, improved teacher attitudes, validating that decision over having the rotating or the changing leadership that they had in the past models. It comes with a financial decision, so I'm just highlighting that return on investment, you know, that we're seeing here. And Ms. Ortiz is outward over consistent commitment to engaging with her staff and repairing there and to getting to know her parents. So kudos to her.
So I have a question, just curious, so I have, you said the staff did a survey regarding how they feel the engagement with parents. What about with parents with the staff? I didn't see anything there. Or not on this, I misunderstood
Yes.
something.
No, a lot of, I will say, for this particular survey, most of the questions with the parents are around the school climate, school culture, things like that. That is a good question to think about adding to surveys, because obviously we do the surveys twice a year, but when it comes to the feedback from the parents, it's mostly about how is the school fit, does the school fit the needs for your child, for your family? How do you feel about the school culture and things like that? But that is.
So there's no like similar
Yes,
question
because
on
that's,
the other side,
that'll be a good
which is
one.
very interesting.
Yes, because I've been, you know, with a lot of parents for Bree lately, and you'll be very surprised what they have to say, I think, and they have asked that question. And I just, it came up to
Yeah.
mind right now when I saw this, that it'll be interesting that you would like to know the feedback of parents with staff in each school.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think those are good questions for us to add. Okay. All right, moving to, this is our Xterra Second Street survey data now. So Second Street has 5th through 8th grade, so that means we have like 2 sets of student data. One set of data is 5th grade only because they're under elementary for the purpose of the survey. And then 6th through 8th grade has another set of data under middle school. So the data is, you know, from the students gave us both glows and grows. Our 5th grade students at Second Street actually ranked the highest when it came to all of the answers around self-management.
Oh, that's great.
When I showed you the data before, when I had those students put together, if I pulled out Second Street, I was pulling out the highest answers. So the students who actually, the 5th graders who actually had the highest ratings about how they feel about the school were our 5th graders who are at Second Street. So by pulling that data apart, we were able to see that. But we still have more work to do when it comes to school safety, climate, and the academic culture for 5th graders at Second Street. And I know that you guys are aware with the middle school, it's been an area where we've been really targeting. So it is great to see growth, but we know we still have areas to work on. So for our 6th through 8th grade, so 6th, 7th, 8th grade, here is the data, and you can see I did put 23, 24 data. That's the chart on the bottom compared with 24, 25 on top. So what you can see looking at the data is that all of the areas improved except for one for 6th through 8th grade. So this is showing signs of improvement, but one of the things that I do want to point out is that the percentage of favorable responses for 6th through 8th grade has always been lower than the elementary students.
And that's true nationally.
Yes, it's true
Yeah.
nationally,
Yeah.
it is a trend, but it's still just with our numbers, you can see we're still ranked in pretty low percentiles compared to where we're ranked when it comes to the elementary students. They just, you know, like have higher perceptions or more positive perceptions of culture, climate, safety, and things like that. So comparing the data does let us know that we're seeing some improvement, but we still have a lot of work to do.
I think this data represents a 2-year effort on the part of Ms. Salas around climate and culture in the middle school. Whereas in year 1 last year, she was laying all the foundational changes around school climate. Now in year 2, we see that, and the data is inverted a little bit, but we see that 5% increase in belonging, an 8% increase in how do you feel about your school climate. And while we know the next phase of Ms. Salas' operation is around valuing school, right? This does speak to a concerted effort with the support and coaching of Ms. Hannon around PBIS structures and systems, and Ms. Haran really highlighting that 2-year effort by the staff.
So the next one is showing us what families say about Xterra Second Street. And one of the things that I want to point out is that you can see here, there's data from 2023, 2024, and now the data. And even though family engagement, you can see from those percentages is the lower, it was actually lower in 23, 24, and even lower in 22, 23. So even though we have a lot of improvement to do in this area, families, the perception was from the families is that they felt more engaged this year at Second Street. Big blows are the percentages for school climate, school fit, and school safety from Second Street. Those were much lower in the past. Again, there's been a lot of work put around that school climate at the middle school.
Remind me, we also had more parents complete the survey.
Yes, that is true. We had more families complete the survey in the past too. Yeah. For the staff surveys from Second Street, and again, you can see just the difference in the way the staff feels from pulling out the data for each school site, but the staff at Second Street rated staff leader relationships the highest compared to our other schools. So this is staff, not the teachers, but this is the staff. And you could also see that school climate, school leadership were also areas where staff rated these areas very favorably. The grows are evaluation, feedback, and coaching, which were lower from all school sites, even though this is just Second Street data that we're looking at. That trend is pretty consistent for all of our school sites. For teachers, again, the data looks different. This is the data from the teachers. So compared to staff, teachers actually rated feedback and coaching highest. But again, this is still an area of improvement because it's still one where we have like less than 70% rating it favorably. But it was rated the highest at Second Street compared with Xterra Eastman or Xterra Breed. Any questions about Second Street before I go over our last school? Because I was saying those Second Streets.
Just a point of information, I have a hard stop at 1:30.
Okay,
But I don't want to preclude from.
understood.
Okay, I will go over this data very quickly. So for our Xterra Eastman campus, the students feel very positively about teacher-student relationships. That was the biggest glow from our 3rd through 5th graders at Eastman. One area that's an area of growth is that our Eastman students did report lower feelings of positive school climate than the rest of our 3rd through 5th graders at Breed or Second Street. So that is an area of improvement for Eastman. Next slide, please. For our families, The families' responses were very positive for Eastman around school climate, school fit, the school setting rigorous engagement, and actually Eastman's percentage for school fit was very, very high. Almost 90% of parents feel like Eastman is the best fit for their child and for their family. But again, just like I said with Exeter Breed and Second Street, family engagement was the lowest rated category. And that's true for all of the schools.
I will quickly share anecdotally that statistic specifically at Exeter Eastman amuses me because the family engagement at Exeter Eastman is significantly higher than it is at our other two campuses. Yet they are still holding themselves accountable to be more engaged than they are. So when you actually count attendance at events, conferences, Eastman is the highest, but they're still giving themselves a low rating. So it's just interesting.
Okay. And then the last one is just what teachers say about Eastman. Sorry, I'm looking at my own slide and I had Second Street up, not Eastman. Teachers rated staff and family relationships very high at Eastman. So teachers are reporting that they have strong relationships with families at Eastman. Also, school leadership and staff leadership relationships were strong areas for Eastman. Evaluation, professional learning opportunities, feedback, these were the low areas from our surveys. Okay. So in closing, I know this was a very long presentation with a lot of data, but we will continue to work on school climate and culture. We will continue to build academic capacity and self-management skills among all grade levels. We can see that families would like to have more opportunities to engage with schools. And based on the staff and teacher feedback, we will continue to refine our coaching and feedback cycles for teachers and school leaders.
This is great.
And that is all.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question on the next steps. What budgetary implications are there for any initiatives on the next steps that should be included in our next year's budget?
So for this, we have already, like, everything that would go under like our PBIS budget, which includes pretty much the funds for all of these things that we do, that's already been added to the budget that we have for this year. We did it in the draft that we did earlier.
I would also highlight that the hiring of an associate director of recruitment and family engagement and elevating that position from a manager role to an AD role is also a fiduciary pledge to improving family engagement.
I think the next item is the spotlight.
Yes, so good afternoon, board. I am excited to talk to you about the academic spotlight regarding parent engagement, which goes very well with what Nicole was just presenting for all of us. So we've done academic spotlights on all of the major initiatives this year. We did ELA and literacy, we did our new science curriculum, enrichment was last time, and now we're covering parent engagement, which is another one of our big focuses for this school year. So it's part of our LCAP. Goal 3 really focuses on parent engagement. It's also been found through studies to be highly effective in terms of student outcomes. So that's another reason that family engagement is just so important. So when we look at family engagement, CDE has, the California Department of Education has the Family Engagement Toolkit, which you can see this matrix right here. Our goal, whenever we're thinking about family engagement opportunities, is to create opportunities that allow families in schools to build trusting relationships and also have connections to student learning. So that's like the perfect meeting point, which is at the top right corner of this matrix right here, when we're able to create opportunities that connect those two together for families. So some of the current offerings we have this year, I also want to give a special recognition to everyone who has worked very hard in putting this in place, which is all of our school leaders, especially Ms. Salas with Parent University, as well as all of our business managers and our parent coordinators, and then Dr. Mohammed, who's also done a 3-part PD series at ILT on family engagement. So there's a lot of these pieces coming together, and it's really something that the whole team has been working very hard on. So we have the parent workshops. There's 21 Parent University workshops and the literacy night, student showcases, which are listed right there, family engagement with teachers about instruction to see what's going on in the classroom, which includes a few different events where students showcase their work, as well as student-led conferences where they walk parents through what they've been learning in class. Family leadership, family communication, and volunteering, which we want to make sure that we're providing a balance of parent engagement opportunities that meet all of these different criteria for families so that they have multiple different ways to engage. We have some photos here of some of our different advisory committees. This is the Parent Advisory Committee. In the top right, we have open house photos. We have student-led conference photos. And we also see the students at morning meeting at EPS2 getting their attendance awards, and parents are invited to attend morning meetings every morning to hear updates about what's going on and see their students be celebrated. We have more photos here of back to school night, PEEPS celebrations, which is the parent engagement something point system. I'm forgetting one of the E's, but it's the parent volunteerism tracking system to monitor and to recognize all of our parent volunteers, as well as our Meet the Teacher at the beginning of the year, which was the first time we did it all together. So building capacity in regards to parent engagement, as I mentioned, we've really pushed this through ILT this year, and Dr. Mohammed has done a 3-part series on parent engagement, pulled from the trainings that come from our literacy grant that we've been receiving, to build capacity within our leadership team. And then we're excited because this will actually be going to teachers on this Thursday during our PD day, where they will be talking about the importance of parent involvement, how they would like to see grassroots involvement coming from teachers, connected through the lever of classroom parents, and bringing that back so that our classroom parents can be really engaged and help facilitate, that bridge between parents and teachers. We also have a parent recruitment training that already happened, and then a classroom parent training this June to get our classroom parents off to a really strong start before the start of next school year. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. I went as
Thank you.
Thank you.
That will be the rest of my pockets. We have a capable vice chair to just carry on. Thank you. Next item is consent agenda approval. There are 3 items on the consent agenda. If any board member wishes to discuss one of those, take it out to discuss. You may do so. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. Thank you.
Oh, we have a very difficult decision to make. Just kidding. We need to vote we need to renew Norman's board term through 2027. Do we have a motion to renew his term?
Yes, I move to renew Norman Bullock for our board term to serve from May 18, 2025 to May 17, 2027.
I second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
You abstaining, sir?
Yes.
all right. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you for
The next time, thank you for your consideration and your approval of my 2-year extension of my term. Next item is advisory team updates.
I think I'm first.
Mhm.
Yep, so Diane and I are working on the team one, we're working on the vision statement and the mission statement. We've done a lot of work to spend a lot of time really trying to clarify what about our current vision statement and mission statement are most important to us, because I think we had all identified last summer that those statements were extremely long and kind of jam-packed to the point that it was hard to distill them down. So these are our working, would you say, Diane? Kind of,
Yes.
we agreed on these in the last meeting.
Yes.
The unanimous from the group was that we felt good about these two statements, and I think the board needs to look at these more closely, maybe after the meeting, if you haven't had time, to make sure they align with what you think or ask questions, because our next step is to talk through our value statements, which are there are some currently on our website, and we need to revise those. I think our goal is to, after our next meeting, I'm gonna speak it into the universe, that we will have these statements and working values to bring to you right away. And then there will be a process of working on like a profile of the graduate with the leadership team to further define how that gets like moved into practice and prioritization around like programs and things that are happening closer to the site. So that's our process and where we're at. Dan, is there anything you would want to add to that?
No.
Good summary?
Yes.
Okay. You want to get us started?
Sure, Team Two has been focusing on fundraising for development. Board members have received the draft of board expectations, and I'm grateful for the input, and I agree with the input that has been shared with me. Then there is a donation campaign that we, the staff, and plus the Give Better line that members of our team have been working very hard on. I want to allow them an opportunity to provide some updates on that.
Yeah, Miss Hannah and Miss Alice took the lead on donor tier letter to solicit primarily business donations, but also family or community member donations. And we've gotten some feedback from one business partner, so we'll be tweaking that and finalizing that, and then switching our donation platform to Give Butter, which is already live. You can donate now to support the Art Walk. Which is June 7th. So we're happy to have the virtual platform active and going so that we can solicit donations large and small. And we're also going to conduct a virtual raffle using Give Better, so families can buy their raffle tickets right online instead of trying to collect cash, which always makes a CFO like me nervous, right, around handling cash. And so we're just looking to make those same tweaks as with the board expectations and check that off the to-do list. Great.
Where do we find the Give Butter link?
That's a great question. I will send that to you ASAP.
Thank you.
Team 3, Ms. Buka.
Yes, thank you. We have actually several celebrations, as was mentioned earlier in our meeting. We went through the process of interviewing as well as hiring our new associate director of recruitment and family engagement. So we're really excited to get some really robust goals we've got to hit in some really strict timelines. So we're excited to be working with Melanie. Also, another celebration, those photos that you see is from the first, I'm going to go back to an email, parent ambassador meeting that Karen and Estrella hosted. So it went very well. And so we're looking forward to the parent ambassador program to be continued and to be a very active part of our recruitment and engagement strategy. Yeah, that's it.
Great. And just like that, the nose, no wonder.
Great. I want to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn our April meeting. Board meeting.
Second that. Seconded by Ms. Alvarado, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.